Hello and welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT podcast. I am Connor Bromley and today we have 3 special guests, including the Red and White Army, who are here to join us. So Andrew, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks.
Dave?
Yeah, a bit hungover, but getting there.
Yeah, you said you were in Keswick this weekend?
40th birthday bash, so unfortunately missed going to the Stadium of Light, but managed to catch it on my phone in the corner of a pub with it plugged in.
Fair play. And you wouldn't have had to have been in Alaska to watch it either with your VPN.
That's right, I just Keswick.
Yeah, let you watch it. And Gordon?
Yeah, all good, yeah.
Represent the former Players Association?
Yeah.
Red and White Army?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, involved in lots of different bits and bobs, yeah, all good.
Busy man.
Busy man, indeed.
So, Dave, Andrew, do you want to give a bit of a background about yourselves? Not even the Red and White Army stuff, but, you know, your background.
Your life story.
Yeah, you got a minute.
Andrew heard This Is Your Life. Yeah, Sunland supporter, basically born into it, as many of us are. Went to my first game, 5-year-old. It was,
what was it? Go on.
Well, first league game I went to was Sunland against Stoke. Andy Melville scored in the right end, and we won 1-0. So I was, it was one of those where you stood at the front of the clock stand, and you've got every weather condition in 90 minutes. So snow, sleet, hail, sunshine, whatever. And the weather was that bad, I didn't want to go back. But my mum was like, you know what? It can only get better from this. On the field, it probably didn't, but weather conditions were all right. So yeah, it's good stuff. So as a Sunland supporter, saw the way things have been going with the club over recent years, real lack of communication, put my head together with likes of Dave and a few others and came up with Red and White Army. So yeah.
So Dave, is that similar to your story?
A bit earlier for me, a bit older. Been a Sunland fan all my life, went to my first match in 85, so I was about 11.
I was 11. -9.
All right,
I was going to say I was -2.
So I get it, I'm old. And then we got stuffed off Liverpool 3-0, but it was the class Liverpool team, with Dalglish and that, But I distinctly remember it was a night match, like when you see the floodlights and the greenness of the pitch and all that after coming over the back of the full end of my door. That was my first match, but more recently, for the last 8 or 9 years now, I've worked for the Football Supporters Federation, and that was partly the route into sort of getting involved with the Red White Army as well, and obviously being very sort of passionate about my own club and taking some of the lessons learned from working nationally with the FSF.
So what do you actually do with the FSF?
So, my job title's Deputy Chief Exec, but it really involves sort of managing the office, which is in Ashbrook. We have an office in London now as well, and we have staff based in the Northwest and in Lincolnshire now as well. And so I sort of look after all the team, get involved with campaigns, get involved with sort of commercial side as well, and sort of meet regularly with the Premier League, the EFL, FA, various other authorities.
Good stuff. And Gordon, we all know about you, so I'm not going to bore everyone.
Yeah, but I bet you don't know what my first game was.
I've no
Vasas
idea.
Budapest in the, I think is like what would be called the UEFA Cup. Now it was
It'll be the Cup Winners' Cup with it, yeah.
Aye, that was my first ever game. Under the lights, I think. It's the first one I can remember anyway. To be fair, it really sticks in my brain. It was a class game, to be fair. I can't remember exactly the score, but obviously it was mobbed in a special night, so.
Hooked at that point.
Hooked from then on in, I think, yeah. Had to be. My old man was a Sunland fan, so you've got no choice, have you?
Fair play. To be fair, my dad's not actually a Sunland fan.
No, mine isn't. Mine's a rugby man, so playing rugby and watching footy.
Yeah, my dad's a Rangers fan, but he travelled all over the place and we just settled here, and here I am. Yeah. Don't know why he made his sport Sunland. I could have supported Rangers. Would have been an easier life, really. So the show is going to be like normal this week. We're not going to make any special dispensation for our guests. We are going to go through the games. You're going to have to be like ROKER reporters for the day. Right. Give really good hot takes on what happened.
You've got to go easy on us. It's my first time, so.
Oh, good job I didn't save that earlier recording in there. So the game itself, we're lined up 4-2-3-1. McLaughlin, Hume, Baldwin, Louvens, Matthews, midfield, Katz, McGeoch, then Maguire, Honeyman, Gooch behind Josh Madger up front. Paddy Madden scored a header from a corner, which is very atypical of Sunland at the moment. Can't defend set pieces. And then we got back Josh Madger with actually a really good goal. If you watch the highlight back, it looks very good. At the time, I thought it was a lucky finish. Oh. So we ended at 1-1. John McLaughlin also saved the first penalty at the Stadium Light for Sunderland, not in a shootout, which is a bonkers stat. And Gordon, I wanted to ask, did you play the last time it happened?
Possibly. I don't know. I'm not sure when it was. So
It was 1989.
there was every chance tonight, to be fair. It might have
Tony
been.
Norman saved it. I don't know who played.
All right. I must have done, yeah. I would think, yeah, probably, yeah. Wasn't in 89. Don't know what that is, no. To be honest. Might have been Notts County. Might have been.
Denny, you know?
I can't remember.
I was probably like 1.5 then, so no, not sure off the top of my head.
I wasn't even anywhere near being born, so.
Just making Gordon cringe a little bit here with how
Just
young
make
we
him
are.
sound really old.
He's just banned.
The old man, the Zimmer frame in the corner.
Exactly.
So some reaction to the game. The first things first, how do we stop conceding goals from set plays? Who wants to take that one?
Well, Gordon's probably best suited, but
He's going to be best suited for all the football questions, really.
I know. You know, me kick around me five-a-side probably doesn't really qualify as much as Gordon, but I think one of the things we haven't had this season is a consistent centre-half pairing. You know, Charlton game, we didn't have Baldwin in there, lining up with Louvens and Ozturk. Baldwin has been fantastic. He's probably been best signing out of the lot of them. But in terms of chopping and changing week in, week out, we haven't had that consistency this season. So, and then you really want your centre halves to be the commanding ones in the box, and your goalkeeper as well. And I just sometimes think whenever balls floated in, McLaughlin, you know, as a goalkeeper, he's fantastic compared to what we've had last season. But is he necessarily communicating? Like, do they have the sort of do they have the relationship between the goalkeeper and the centre halves? And you know, we can build it as time goes on, but when we're chopping and changing week in, week out, we haven't got that consistency right now.
I think even if we did have as well, it's still a relatively new squad.
Yeah.
And I think you know, at the back is where you need to be really drilled and you need to be used to each other. You can get away with it a bit further up the pitch a little bit, but when you get exposed at the back when you're not used to playing together. So I think it was always going to be like that. I think. So hopefully throughout the season they'll develop that understanding. What Andrew was alluding to there.
Do you think we need to get bigger, Gordon? Do you think he needs to look at yesterday? 2 centre backs were tall, and everyone else was a short horse, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have mentioned it, haven't they? At the end of the day, we have got a small squad, haven't we? But you know, that's what we choose to play with. You go that way, you take a little bit of a chance when you get set players against. And obviously, it was, to be fair, the lad knocked in a great corner before that. And I think we just managed to scramble it away. And then the second one was, again, another good delivery. It's just sometimes you can't do a lot about it. It was great delivery, good header. There was nobody on the back post. I seen maybe something else you could think about. But, you know, it's just a trait we've had for a long time now, isn't it? It isn't just this squad. It's squads that's gone previously before. We seem to struggle in aerially, basically, I would say, yeah.
Do you think there could be an argument when, if you put Flanagan in at fullback, one of the fullbacks, then he's tall and is almost like a centre half. Then if you could maybe move Oviedo up to where Maguire is, I know that sounds a bit wacky, but stick with us, because Maguire's been struggling recently. Yep. I think it's fair to say McGeady's not quite back fit. You've got a defensive player there, though, who is good attacking, but is good to have in the box for corners. And then if you bring in Charlie Wyke, you've got another tall player, and then defending the set pieces, suddenly you've got 5 players there who are actually capable, you know, of winning headers in the box and it not just kind of being luck.
Yeah, I think the second half setup against Charlton, when we played 3 at the back with the wing backs, you know, it would give us that opportunity to get a third big centre half, because I know Adam Matthews filled in against Charlton. So having Flanagan in there with Louvens, Baldwin, or Ozturk's been playing all right the last couple of games. So if we come up against a physical team, stick Ozturk in there, because he likes a bit of a man-to-man battle. But yeah, play 3 at the back, and with your wing backs, it allows, as you say, Oviedo to push down the wing, gives him a bit more of a free role. I think you hit the nail on the head with Maguire. His form over the last couple of games has dropped. He started off really, really well, and he was getting attention for all the right things. But yeah, Oxford game, he wasn't fantastic at all, and you know, he sort of disappeared out of it yesterday as well.
He was really poor against Stoke midweek, if you hear that one.
Yeah.
Dave, do you think Maguire's disappointing? Disappointing at the minute. He's been good overall.
I think he set himself high standards, didn't he? He really shone as one of the signings when he first came in. And to me, he looks like a very intelligent footballer. And I guess, there's a little bit of a dip, but the team seems to have dipped a little bit as well, doesn't it? Whether that shows how important he is to us, don't know. When he plays well, we play well, maybe. But I've been really impressed with him. And it's just last couple of games, I would say. Bit off the ball, but
I think having Oviedo doing the defending and the attacking gives Maguire more of a free role.
I think where Oviedo back on this side, I think you've got that bit more experience at the back as well, and that little bit more know-how. I don't know exactly what he's like as a communicator, but hopefully he would be able to help marshal the defence a little bit as well. And obviously, we all know how good he is getting forward.
Yeah, I suppose he should be a natural leader in the dressing room. One of the higher paid players, Premier League experience. You would think he would be able to communicate and also kind of help somebody like Denver Hume progress, on the training ground, teaching him the things. Because I thought Hume was very impressive yesterday. Certainly you could see that him and Gooch had played together a lot, in the system, and Madja for that matter across there. He was often on the left-hand side. And I thought it was quite interesting to see all of our luck kind of came down that side yesterday.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent. What I could see on my little phone in the pub in Keswick, in between pints. But I thought he was really good. He's probably one of the high points from yesterday.
One of the players that sort of splits opinion. I'm going to throw this to you, Gordon. George Honeyman. Yesterday, there was people saying he was brilliant, and there was people saying that he was poor. Where do you sit on the George Honeyman debate?
Probably somewhere in between. I mean, George is George. I've seen him over a long period of time since he's been a kid, basically. And George is real hard working, honest lad who will never give you less than that, and I think everybody appreciates that. Sometimes he doesn't move the ball quick enough. He hangs onto the ball a little bit too much, but George is always going to do what he does, and he's it depends what you want out of a footballer. He's always going to give you 110%. He never gives you less than that. He's trying his socks off. He produces for the goal. I wouldn't have said he was outstanding or anything like yesterday, but there was plenty of others in that boat as well, to be fair.
What do you think of Honeyman? He's pro.
I'd say I'm pro at the minute. Yeah, he's got a very, very, very good engine on him. Like he will run for the full 90 minutes plus. The role he's playing at the minute, that sort of central role behind the striker, you'd expect him to create a little bit more. But in terms of it being a team player, being somebody who contributes, you'll get 110% from him. If that's the minimum you get from him, he's gonna keep going for the team.
Dave?
Yeah, I like him. I'm not exactly sure why people get sort of down on him, really. I think he's honest. He's local lad and gives it all. He's like living the dream, and he's not outstanding. He's not head and shoulders above anyone in that league. And a bit like quite a few in our squad, he lacks the physicality, which is obviously detrimental, especially in League One. But no, I like him.
I thought yesterday, obviously got the assist, and the two best chances we had in the game came from his crosses. I thought yesterday, personally, what more do you want from a player who plays in them attacking midfield areas? Yeah. Create your best chances. Gooch yesterday had a poor game as well, I thought anyway. It seemed to try a lot and it never seemed to come off for him.
I think one thing you get with Lyndon Gooch, sometimes he hangs on the ball a little bit too long. You'd like to see him move it. He creates space. He creates a lot of space and he opens the game up a lot. And you're thinking, go on, just release the ball. And he just takes an extra touch. And that extra touch, is detrimental sometimes. But on the flip side of it, against Luton, you're thinking, he's hung on the ball too long and he played that cracking ball through to Madja for the goal. So you can see he's always trying to do things in his head. He's always trying to work an opening. But, regular football, Gooch didn't really play that much regular football last season. He came in and out of the team. He didn't really have a good spell. So probably, a couple of months into the season is probably the time when you start looking at Honeyman and Gooch and the likes of those players. And once you've given them a decent spell in the squad, that's when you probably start looking at them saying, well, are they doing the job, are they not? But certainly for the time being, I think Gooch has been fantastic this season. And again, as Dave was saying about Maguire, the sort of high standards that people have set early on, they may struggle with the intensity of League One, they may need a bit extra game time or a bit of recovery on the flip side of it. So you think, probably look at people 2 or 3 months in the season, because this is the first time a lot of them are having regular football.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a point certainly I've never thought about.
I think you've got to be a bit more forgiving as well of attacking and creative players, and you've got to allow them to make those mistakes. I think Jack Ross touched on it when he first came in. It's like, you can forgive mistakes as long as they're trying and as long as you're trying to move it quickly in the last third. It's not always going to come off. I remember sort of watching Chris Waddle even, and he could be a little bit frustrating. But when he did it, when he was on form, it was class. It's hard to be consistent in that type of role, I think. But yeah, I love him. He's like one of them where you get up out your seat, and when he's on the ball, he's an exciting player.
Lee Cattermole, good game yesterday, I thought. Certainly when he got control in the second half, we certainly looked better. He seems to be very integral to the way we're playing at the minute. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, he's been probably the biggest plus, hasn't he, since he's come back in the team. He's been excellent the last few weeks. You know what you're getting from Lee, always have done. He puts his heart and soul into it. A little bit last season, a few people said he might have lost his legs, but he'd had a terrible season the year before with injuries. I don't think there's any doubt in his commitment to the football club. Every time he's put the shirt on, he gives his lot, and he's playing really well at the minute. Yeah, I thought that the lad alongside him, McGeoch, was a little bit disappointing. Well, yeah, I got there in the end. Yeah, I don't know how to say that, to be honest, but I'm not very good at Scottish. But I thought Katz was excellent, yeah, and he's been a massive plus coming back in and showing the right attitude, and that's all you want as a fan, and he's done that. He's been great, yeah.
What do we all... I mean, I remember after the Luton game, I had an ill-timed bit of a Twitter rant on Lee Cattermole saying, no, what, get rid of him. I'm sick of him. He's a liability. And then obviously the next week he scores 2 goals and it's all brought back to my, door. Oh, you're wrong, this. I'm just happy he's scoring. I don't know where you sat on that debate at the start of the year.
I think you wouldn't have been alone in that, and I don't think you can be chastised for not predicting 2 goals from Cattermole in a game. But last season I thought he'd be away. I thought I thought he was knackered. Too many injuries, and
that, didn't they?
Yeah, and I thought he couldn't really get around the pitch, and his game is about being tigerish and getting stuck in, and he just didn't seem to have it. Now, obviously, as a club, we're in a mess, and so how much of that played a part, I don't know, but we would certainly be a worse squad without him now. And from sort of Stewart Donald's comments yesterday, guess there might be a chance that if somebody comes in for him, he will still be away in January, possibly. Hopefully by that time, McGeoch is firing on all cylinders.
Max Power as well.
And Max Power, of course.
Yeah, definitely,
so Fleetwood in general, I'll talk a little bit about them. I thought they were a decent outfit. I was surprised to see so many big sort of name players there, like Dean Marney. I looked at Ched Evans. They had Conor McIlney from Evan.
Yeah.
Him. Yeah. I say I can't pronounce that one. You can't do McGeoch. I can't do that one. It had a lot of those sort of players that I was surprised to see them at Fleetwood, and I thought they were a decent outfit.
Yeah, in terms of the play, they started off a lot like other teams have this season. They were very intense, high pressing early on, and a lot of teams sort of fade off when they play Sunland. And one thing that's got us back into the game recently is these teams sort of throwing everything at you for 30 minutes and then just dying off. And obviously we can get back into the game, and we've seen us win a few games and obviously draw against Oxford with 10 men. But they sustained it throughout the game. They had a bit of a dip. I thought, contrary to what Joey Barton was saying, I thought they were hanging on a little bit towards the end. But to keep their intensity up and to keep those fitness levels up, and were pressing us. Like our 2 centre midfield players yesterday didn't have a lot of time on the ball at all. And that's, the games when we've done well this season is when you've had Max Power or Cattermole having a bit of space, just spray the ball around. We didn't get that, so I was actually really impressed with them. They were a bit of an unknown quantity for me. I'm going to plead a bit of League One ignorance because, until you play them, you don't necessarily pay that much attention to them. But I was actually really quite surprised, and especially, Joey Barton, I don't care much for him as a person, but as a manager, he seems to be doing pretty well with the team.
Fair play. What do you think, Fleetwood? Who wants to say that one? Who else wants to?
Well, I would just again, obviously watching on my phone. It's not always the best way, but
you need an iPad. That's what.
But it was my phone's tiny as well.
iPad.
It's again quite physical in our faces. Started really well, and they were better than I thought they were going to be, and very well drilled. They did sit back quite a bit as well. Like as soon as we had possession, it was like everyone behind the ball. But that's what's going to happen, isn't it? That's at the Stadium of Light. It's just, like it's been said loads of times, but for a lot of clubs, it's going to be their sort of like cup final.
Yeah, Gordon, what do you think of the general kind of competition in League One? I mean, you'll probably know far more than us because we're ill-educated, seemingly, on League One football. I certainly am. What do you make of the competition? Because I've been surprised at how, after you see Scunthorpe when they were absolutely dreadful, but then some of the other teams have been, like Oxford last week, first half an hour, were brilliant. It seems to be quite an up and down sort of what teams are bringing to her.
Yeah, my overall thing is basically League One. I always say that the biggest difference is between League One and Championship. I think that's the biggest jump of all. Second to first is not a lot. Even Championship to Premier League, a lot of the Premier League clubs are only Championship clubs in name, really, and that's been proven probably over the last few years when clubs have gone down. But I'd say it is a big jump, and there is a big difference. But yeah, teams have surprised us, haven't they? No doubt about it, and coming out a good go at us. So overall, the standards not too bad. I don't think we're scared of anybody, are we? I don't think particularly there's one team in there even now. Peterborough are good going forward. There's other good footballing sides like Luton will come and play football against you. But overall we should be there or thereabouts come the end of the season if we keep our main players fit.
I was looking as well. We've picked up essentially 5 wins from 7 games because of the draws we've had. To keep that sort of level of performance going, you will go up come the end of the season. Like, it has been a good start in the sense of they are undefeated, and 15 points from a possible 21 will eventually get you up. And I think sometimes it's perspective, isn't it?
It feels like a little bit like the bonus points at the minute, because like it is a squad that's like development and emerging and getting used to each other. So to get them points on the board early on, where hopefully we're only going to get better and better, must be, Jack Ross must be over the moon with that. 'Cause I think everybody was a little bit nervous about so many new players, even though that a lot of them did have a bit more of a pre-season than in previous years when we've thrown a lot of individuals together. But so I think that I'm over the moon with the start, and hopefully we'll start defending better, and hopefully we'll look a bit more like a unit, because we've only looked like it in patches, haven't we? We've looked decent, and then we sort of revert back to being a little bit shaky.
1 goal conceded from open play as well, which deserves credit. It's often something overlooked because we've been so poor at set pieces, but in general open play it's been good.
I think what Gordon was saying earlier on there about the difference in League One, I thought, like my impression was a big drop from the Championship, and I think there's a few times where where teams are getting behind us, and that feeling of there's a goal coming here, that very familiar feeling that we all have. I thought there's a few times when I've been sort of wincing, and then they don't take the chance. I think that's been a big difference as well.
It's the quality, isn't it? Just that final third quality isn't there. And you see it with us. When we went to Gillingham and beat them 4-1, we actually really only had 4 or 5 chances and put away for them. So that is the level of quality, isn't it? That's the difference.
Yeah, that Wimbledon game. Like when Cattermole equalised, Wimbledon had a couple of chances, even in the 6-yard area, that they just blazed over the bar. And you're looking at it, if that was a Championship team, they would have been goals, no doubt about it. So I think we've got lucky with a few of them, but it comes down to the standard of opposition we're playing, really.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit before, certainly I did. But we've got a question here saying, is it time for Jack Ross to get ruthless with his team selection and start dropping players in favour of more physical options, or do we stick with what we use for the most part this season?
I think we need to build a strong, cohesive unit. As Dave said, this is a team that has undergone massive change in the summer. And it's not just the starting 11, it's the whole footy club has undergone a massive change in the summer. So to be unbeaten going into this season, going where we are now unbeaten, I think it's a fantastic achievement to get as far as we've done with the players we've got. So I think we need to start looking forward now. I think there is a need for a bit more physicality in the team. But where do you start chopping and changing? Because there aren't many players at the minute who are standing out as being particularly poor or off the boil. So you're sort of saying, well, who do you identify to bring somebody new in? And when we're trying to build a cohesive, strong unit going forwards, I wouldn't necessarily start chopping and changing unless we have to. You see with Max Power's suspension the other day, we've had to throw McGeek in, and we want McGeek to get up to speed because we know he's a good footballer, he's a good ball-playing footballer, but he needs more game time. So if you bring somebody in out the cold and suddenly drop them in the team, they're necessarily going to be up to the level that you need to hit the ground running. So if we can avoid chopping and changing, that's probably what I'd say we need to do. Anybody
else got a retort to that? Are we all in agreement?
Yeah, I think basically Max Power is vital to our team. I don't think he's like Steven Gerrard, but he has got a bit of physicality in the middle of the park, and to add that to Cattermole, and he can play a bit as well. So and he scored goals, hasn't he? So that's a big difference. I think, look, the biggest thing is we've had a great start. We've probably nicked a few points here and there where we've got wins and we out of draws and the other way around, but you can't ask for any more. I think the biggest change has been that everybody's so happy about is the players are giving a lot, and that's the big difference. You can see it from when you watch on the sides. The standard of the players isn't going to be as high as what we've probably had before, but everybody's having a right go. So that's only power to the manager at the end of the day. He's created that atmosphere, and you can see all the lads are having a right go. The only thing that slightly worries me at the minute is I know that when we went down to League One, when we went up that year, we murdered some teams in League One, and of yet, probably only, what was the 4-1 game? Was it Gillingham? Yeah.
Beat Scunthorpe.
Gillingham away, yeah. And Scunthorpe here, where Scunthorpe were absolutely abysmal, to be fair. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but I think they're just in the process of losing the manager and all that type of thing. So, we need to do that a little bit more. We need to back the teams at home and really create a place that people are going to be scared to come to in League One. And if we can do that, and I'm certain with the attacking players that we've got, we can go away from home and nick results as well. So we've got to go close,
Do you think, you talk about when we were last in the third division there, we had a bad start that year, didn't we? It wasn't a great start, and then we built up
and obviously the biggest difference was, Marco came in and did incredible, that was the big difference. If you get a striker who can score 25, 30 goals, that gives you, a real chance, doesn't it? And he was sensational that season. So that was the only thing I was slightly disappointed on from in the signings. I think we should have signed one more striker, to be honest. I'm not a big man for bringing people in on loan. I like to see people signed. So we haven't done too well with the old loan signings. I know. Listen, we took a chance on Sinclair as a young lad who could possibly do it, but I'd love to have seen us brought in another permanent striker who was part of the club, and he knew he was going forward with the club. So that was the one big disappointment from the last transfer window. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he's in January.
Yeah, Sinclair's an interesting one because they can recall him in January. We have no. It's almost like the Graben deal last year. We have no authority over what happens with him post January. Which, if he has 10 goals, then that's going to be very frustrating. But the striker debate in itself is quite interesting. We've got 3 there. I think all 3 have got a good shout of being the main striker. But who was siding with at the minute? Do you go with Madja? He's the hot hand. He's the one scoring the goals, or do you flip it round?
I don't think you can drop Madja at the minute. He didn't have a lot more to his game yesterday, but his goal ratio is great, isn't it, at the minute? So you kind of, that's what he's there for, putting the bat in the net. Not really seen enough of Wyke, really, but he looks a little bit off the pace to me.
Yeah, looks like he's almost. It does look like he's not played football for a month, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and everyone else has.
Sure so.
Sinclair, what do you make of him?
What we've seen against Charlton, he's a fast player, somebody who likes a bit of a battle as well. Before he did his hamstring, he cut his head open, and he's not somebody who's afraid to put his body on the line, which really like the look of. He's got that enthusiasm and drive. What I would say is his finishing looks a little bit suspect. When he's last season at Watford, he had quite a few clear-cut chances when he was playing, didn't take them. And against Charlton, he had a decent opportunity, which should have put us 2-1 up and not left us hanging on till the dying minutes. But
he's a performer. That's what he is. He knew that Gucci was going to put that one in the last minute. He just wanted to keep rolling it.
I think he was the only person that knew that was going to happen. But he's a young player, and I'd like to see more of him, to be honest. But where does he fit in the system? Jack Ross likes to have his 3 behind his lone striker. Could he play on one of the wide areas? But then you're potentially going to drop somebody like Gooch, who's been performing pretty well. Possibly Maguire. He's we've already touched on him, but he's had a bit of a blip. Do you maybe put Sinclair in for Maguire and see what he can do? But he's certainly a player I'd like to see more of. But as Gordon said, he's not really our player, and he could end up going back in January. So do you want him banging in 10 goals and having to rely on him, like Graben, for him to leave us high and dry? Especially if we've still got the high earners on the boot. Can we necessarily bring a striker in?
Yeah.
So
I think at least we've got 3 different sort of strikers, or haven't we? We've got Madja, who's very much a fancy flick, very good with the ball, in and around his feet, under his head. You've got Wyke, who's a tall target man.
He's a battering ram, basically.
He's a shithouse, isn't he?
Yeah.
He doesn't even necessarily win headers. He just annoys by throwing himself into the.
We haven't had a strike like that for a hell of a long time. When we've been relegated the last 2 seasons.
Billy Whitehurst, haven't we?
Well, the thing is, no one's
Kevin
really
Kyle.
bullied the centre halves.
Hi, Kevin Kyle.
Torrey Andre Flo.
He never bullied the centre half. But we need somebody just to rough the defence up a little bit, make the 2 centre halves work a little bit more. And Charlie Wyke, when he's fit, that's somebody who'll do it. And you'll get the opposing centre halves. They'll get knackered if they're playing up against somebody who's just intent on running into them. And it'll open the game up for our more creative players to get in behind. So I like to see more of Wyke, but it depends on the opposition. It's like what we're saying about the centre halves. We'll have to change the centre halves depending on who we're playing, because Ozturk likes his physicality. If we're up against a Wimbledon, for example, Charlie Wyke's the sort of player that you want playing against a Wimbledon team.
No, I agree. I think as well, the defensive set pieces I touched on at the start, having Wyke in is like having another centre back in them sort of positions.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to win headers.
Apart from that one he nearly shanked in the week before.
That's true.
Aye.
We're not mentioning that one. That doesn't serve my point, Gordon. Come on. I'll mute your microphone.
To be honest, I shouldn't be pontificating on any of this because I coach a kids team and we got relegated last season and we got stuff 5-2 yesterday morning.
Yeah, you got that
From
relegation
set pieces.
hangover. You get on that training ground.
We actually pummeled them. But anyway,
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
nobody wants to hear about that.
Yeah.
We believe you.
What else have we got here? A little bit about referees. So I've got a question from Matt Forster asking that in the same way that players come to the stadium light for pretty much the first time, maybe the only time in their career, and they want to be a hero and they put that 110% in, do you think referees are sort of thinking the same thing? Because we've seen some interesting refereeing performances. Yesterday's referee I thought was all right, but the one last weekend wasn't.
The one against Oxford, I think, the Max Power send-off decision, it's divided opinion. He was late, he was rash. You can see why the referee went for the red, and obviously the FA sided with the referee. But you're looking for consistency from your referees. Catamol broke free in the second half and got dragged down by a lad who was already on a yellow card. You're thinking it's definitely a second yellow. And was he evening up the Chris Maguire incident in the first half where he was on a booking and kicked out? You don't know what's going through the referee's head, but certainly the standard of refereeing, as we've dropped through the leagues, the standard of refereeing's dropped as we've gone through the leagues as well.
I never thought I'd say it, but I miss Andre Mariner, me.
You're loving that suntan, are you?
Yeah, I used to hate him. He used to be the one, it's Mariner today. And now, I'd love a bit of Mariner. I'd love to have him back.
But I thought the referee yesterday had an all right. You can't praise him too highly because, he did let a couple of things go when you're thinking that should have been a free kick. And he was very expressive when he was given free kicks.
Very army, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
he loved throwing the arm out.
He had a full-on action when he was given a free kick. But we can't complain about him. There weren't too many incidents that stick out in your mind and think actually he's done that wrong or he's done that wrong. So if the referee's just sailing through without too much conversation about him, then he's done an all right job. But certainly this season there's been probably more occasions where you've spoken about the referee than not.
We also have a question here about starting the game slowly. So, Gordon, I'm going to throw this at you. Why are we starting the game slowly? What would your expert opinion be on that?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I don't think he's obviously the manager wants them to go out like that, but I think teams are coming, I think especially at home, to Stadium of Light and just having a right go, and they're enjoying the fact they're coming to a massive football ground that they've never played at before. It's their big day out, really. A lot of lads that are playing against Sunland have probably never played at a stadium like that before. Massively up for it, having a right go, and then die off a little bit. And I think we're probably paying for that a little bit. But as the game goes on, we're starting to gain more control as games are going on. So, but we've just got to be prepared. The teams are going to come and have a massive fight with us in the first 20 minutes, half an hour, and be up for it and are at us, and they have been. And we've struggled to cope. How do you get it? Well, that's up to the manager really to sort out. He's got to be letting players know that's going to be the case. They're coming here today. This is their cup final. They're going to be right in our faces. They're going to be having a right go at us and trying to, force the issue, and they have done. Yeah.
I noticed that we seem to warm up until 5-10 minutes before kickoff. We're very late to go back in the change room. I don't know if that's maybe something. The fact that they're warming up straight back out.
Well, I'm not a big one on that. We used to go in the bath to warm up, to be honest. So I'm not a big one for running around before the game, to be honest. I don't think it makes a massive difference. I just think it's like I say, it's the away team coming in. It's a massive game for them. You've got to understand that, and we've got to be prepared for that, and haven't been a little bit. Yeah.
I don't want to sort of overplay the importance of this, but what I've noticed this season is loads of people still coming in the ground after kick-off as well. And just in terms of the fans being up for it right from the first minute as well, that feels like it's lacked out a little bit. And sort of, I know that the two things feed off each other: the performance on the pitch and the response to the fans and all that. But I think also that would be good if we can, as a fan base, be right up for it right from the first minute and get that raw like what you used to get. But I think as fans we've been pummeled in previous years, so you can sort of understand why it is the case. But I think slowly but surely we're getting that sort of raw back as well, and I think that might help. But isn't it class though that when we concede the first goal, it's not like you would go again and you think we're knackered. You still feel like we can get something from the game, and then obviously the fans do respond and push them on, which has been class because I think Cattermole mentioned it to you, Andrew, didn't he, about how it's great to get that raw when we're a goal down, whereas in previous seasons it's been like at least the starting of a bit of booing, or the collective shrug of shoulders as it ended up in the end. So it's a lot better now.
To be fair, we're not getting beat 4-0 at home Aston Villa at half time, which is
exactly
nice.
We're not having to worry about it, even if the ball went anywhere near the 18-yard box, even if it was uncontested like last season. Your heart will be in your mouth thinking, is the goalkeeper going to deal with this? Yeah, it's like they've swung a ball into the box. Are we going to concede? Possibly. So yeah, it's nice seeing a goalkeeper who's got hands.
It's amazing, isn't it? And do you know what else was amazing? How good Robin Reuter was midweek. And I wonder if that's just the fact that he sort of, it all fed together, didn't it? All the keepers were performing badly, and it just seemed to, add on top of each other. And then Reuter comes in midweek and looks like he didn't look like a keeper at all.
I think the one thing about Reuter, he was the best of a bad bunch last year, and I think there was some issues. I heard a lot of stories, I don't know if 100% right, but he did have a bad shoulder, I think, didn't he? So maybe he's got over that fully now. I didn't think he was as well. It would probably be impossible to be as bad as the other two, to be fair, that played last year. But yeah, hopefully he does better this season. Obviously McLaughlin's done well so far, but yeah, let's hope he can put a bit of pressure on as well. It's always good to have competition for places, isn't it?
He's working in a positive environment now as well, isn't he? Yeah. Like any of us in any job, if you've got a good environment around you, you perform that bit better, don't you? And maybe that's partly to do with that as well.
Gordon, why do you think Lee Camp got a chance to play for Birmingham this year? Curious to see it again. Ask David Priest this. We had him in the studio, and he was flabbergasted. So I don't know. Have you got any wisdom on that?
No, not at all. No, I haven't. No, I mean, Steele as well. Obviously, going to a Premier League club, it's pretty amazing. Really, they got good agents. I must be useless, to be honest. I couldn't have got them two there. I'll tell you that much. They both got great moves considering how they played last season. So
maybe he's a hypnotist. Maybe he hypnotises people in the room.
What amazes me, because it's not as if anybody can't see anybody anymore. Everything's there, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can watch every game a football has ever been now. They've got all these things and analysts and all that to watch all the games, so they've got no excuses at all.
They've loaned out Stockdale as well. He's went to Southend. Who was the good keeper there who's been promoted by Brighton? I was like, what he's doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you know what? This isn't a Birmingham City podcast, but I just found that irritating. Final one on the game yesterday, or certainly, just kind of looking ahead to next week. Oviedo's back, so what do we do with Denver Hume, who, deservedly should keep his place, but obviously Oviedo's class, so yeah.
We've touched on Oviedo already in terms of what he can do further up the field and allowing, Maguire to somewhat have a free role. I think with Oviedo, one thing you'll get from him is that obviously he'll get up and down the wing, but he causes their defenders a massive headache, because when he does sort of get into attacking mode, and there's that sort of free role for Maguire, for Gooch to interchange as well. It keeps their defenders guessing an awful lot. So I think, yes, he can put quality balls in, but he also makes their defenders have to think a lot more as well. So as well as Hume played, and I'd love to see more of him, I think, that it's really Oviedo's place.
Fair. All in agreement?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think Denver Hume just maybe just lacking a little bit defensively just yet. He's good going forward, very good athlete. But Oviedo is he is a class player and probably shouldn't be. He's probably the only one you feel a little bit sorry for. He seems to be a good professional and done everything right, and probably deserves to be playing at a better level. But he ain't, and he's playing with us, so long may he keep doing well.
You said yesterday that Kevin Ball's working with getting academy players out on loan. That's what his role is at the minute, and then they're going to reassess, get him on the coaching pitch eventually. But I wonder if Hume could actually benefit from maybe a spell in League Two. I know he looks good at the minute. I don't want to necessarily say, we don't need him, but we do have fullback options. It might be better for him to go out, play some games, come back in January, and then if Oviedo goes, you've got a ready-made replacement sort of waiting for you.
It's a bit of a tricky one, because on the left-hand side, obviously Oviedo and James are decent left-backs. So is Hume necessarily going to get in there, or do you send him out on loan? If you're just looking at left-back position, you'd say you could probably afford to send him on loan. But he's also filled at Chef Wed game, and Cuppy filled in a right back. And I'd say right back is where we're quite suspect at the minute. So if he's got the adaptability, if he's as comfortable at right back as he was playing left back yesterday, which he was very left footed, but if he can play at right back like he can do a left back, Matthews always picks up niggly injuries. He never really seems to have a consistent spell in the team. And Donald Love he just seems to sort of adapt to the league he's in. He's always very consistent. You don't really see him sort of like playing above the level he's always been. He's just
seems to be poor, to be honest, this year.
I'm not going to be as harsh,
Yeah.
but it's one of those where, going back to Denver Hume, would you have Denver Hume or Donald Love if Matthews picked up an injury? You'd probably say throw Hume in and see what happens, because he's not really going to be any worse than Love. So that's probably the conundrum: is do you send him on loan, or do you fill him in at right back if Matthews gets another injury?
The only thing is, you can only send him out, I think, to, you can't send him out on loan now to anywhere in the league. You'd have to go non-league. So,
Okay.
they're like the National League or whatever, not really non-league, is it? But it's a decent level still. But yeah, I don't think you can go out on loan
I thought
now,
it still might be. I suppose
Yeah.
Loman no closing 31st. Oh, because Embleton went out on deadline day, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Molyneux's gone to Gateshead, which
Gateshead,
if he's getting regular football at Gateshead, I think that's going to be good for him.
Started last night and they won.
Yeah,
It was on BT. So we're going to jump now. Red and White Army stuff. We've done a nice 40 minutes on the game, so we're going to talk about all the bureaucratic stuff to do with Sunderland and use the head of the support as, I don't know, what would you call yourself? The supporters,
an independent
voice?
supporters association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the official?
Like democratically structured independent supporters association, I suppose what we are. Yeah.
So did you get the idea for that yourself, for the Football Supporters Federation? Is that where that idea kind of came?
Partly, and there's plenty of them about. There's the FSF has about 350 supporter groups affiliated or associated to them through the membership, and many of them are sort of democratically structured and well organised, varying levels of sort of size and visibility in their own areas. And Sunland sort of didn't really have that. There's been some interesting and very good groups around Sunland, and there's obviously the fanzines and people like yourselves, but there wasn't sort of one overarching group that could sort of bring a lot of the different entities together to form a sort of cohesive voice. We've had bits of criticism since we launched about they're not the voice of all fans because they're not speaking for me. Don't really mean that. We can be the voice for all. It's open to all. So as long as you're a Sunderland fan, you're welcome. And that's sort of what we're getting at there. But it is to try to be like a conduit between the club and the fans. It was very necessary when we launched in September 2017, wasn't it? September last year?
Yeah, September last year.
It was very necessary then. I think the timing was ended up being spot on, but bit of luck really, because it gave us a real grounding with some interesting and tricky characters in the basket case of a club at the time.
Martin Bain.
Got it in one. And it meant we could establish a bit of credibility with our supporter base, which is, always takes time to do for people to understand what you're doing. And then we've got, obviously, the new regime in now, and it's less necessary in terms of transparency at the minute. Who knows, will it always be like that? Hopefully it will. But there's a lot of stuff being talked about and a lot of transparency through yourselves and through other fanzines and through the local press and on social media. But what we want to do is try to continue to keep holding them to account on things. So we will have formal meetings which will be minuted. So you've got, I'm not saying hold the feet to the flames because it's a bit harsh really, given how great they've took to the role. But that's what it's still there for. We still should do that and continue to do that, because it'll not always be this honeymoon period.
There's always the need for that critical friend. A lot of the guys that have come into the club, Stewart, Charlie, Juan, the massive football supporters, and that really helps. But in terms of understanding and appreciating the beast that is Sunderland and the fan base and everything that we've got, the fans need that two-way interaction. And as Dave said, it needs to be structured as well. So with football, you always get ups and downs, and obviously seeing Sunderland, we've probably seen more downs than ups. We've started off really well this season, but there may be pressing issues that happen later in the season or in years to come that supporters say, actually, how do we get in touch with the club? How do we facilitate sitting down with the club and discussing these issues and getting them resolved? So there's always a need and a necessity for an organisation like Red and White Army to exist.
just want to preface before we'll go ahead with loads of the questions we've got going. I have attended the odd meeting. I'm not going to say that I'm a regular because I'm not. Well, you'll see as there if I was a regular, I'm not. So I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but that I think will be good for this conversation because there'll be people listening to this who might not know who you are, won't necessarily know exactly what you do. So I think this is a good opportunity for you to sort of, almost sell yourselves, I suppose.
Well, I think
nice way.
what's this season, what we've been about as a group is obviously forming relationships with the new owners is important. Make sure there's a bit of trust there and a bit of respect, which there has been from day one, really. Before the takeover occurred, we sort of met with Charlie in the engine room in the former fire station, unsurprisingly, over a few beers. It's been good sort of building that relationship up. The difference between the previous season is that we're actually getting on and cracking on and talking about positive change and influencing things. So one of the big things we did about a month or so ago was, longer than that actually, was launch a match day experience survey. And in about a week, 9,000 supporters completed it, which is massive. And the club endorsed it and said they'd listen. So we've been actually spending time behind the scenes, having various meetings, looking at things like the identity at the Stadium of Light and trying to we are looking at an artwork project which is progressing to bring various sort of bits of artwork around the stadium that some of which will hark back to ROKER Park, some of which will be our history and geography, and some of it will be celebrating players, all that sort of stuff. So really like good stuff, like actually enjoyable rather than what it was like last season. And then there's the meetings coming up as well, which we've got 4 dates set throughout the rest of this season.
So that's meetings club?
So this is meetings with the club that'll be minuted. So we're actually at a point now where we'll be putting stuff out on social media to ask fans what they want us to take to the meeting. Now that in the previous season would have been a flood of things that everyone was wanting to know about. Are we trying to sell the club, etc., etc.? Now people have scratched their heads a little bit because of the transparency of the owners, but there is still things that we want to push on.
It's funny that you bring that up because we put out for questions when we'll have Donald on, and now it's like little gripes. Like that's the main thing you get. Like, the speakers aren't necessarily working as well as they could be. The pints are too expensive. Obviously, there's nothing they can do about that. But it's so good because if we had Martin Bain in here last year, I mean, the horribleness of the questions that we would have got in would have been so bad. Now we're in a position where it's, the things we're working. It's why you should exist is, to put things that, I'm not going to say they're minor things, but like the things that actually help fan experience, help fans, support the club in a way that they want to do. And I suppose that's what you're trying to do, isn't it? Yeah, it's everything from like a price of a pie through to the governance of the club. Yeah. And it's important that it's that whole gamut, really. And we've what we want to do is make sure as well that, whilst we're looking at all this good stuff and interesting stuff and talking to local artists and all that, it's been really good. But there'll come a time when in these meetings where we want to look at, how the club is being run, what are the details of the finances. Again, he's been very transparent about that, but we want to make sure that we're hanging around watching that they're not going to mortgage up the club again and get carried away. I want you to go through like a timeline. So where this idea is formed, did you have a pint one day in the pub and you're like, I tell you what, Dave, fan group, that's what I'm thinking when you're hammered at 2:00 in the morning? Or was it something that, you've talked about for years and then you eventually got around to doing it?
I think it was one of those where all the stars sort of align. It sounds very cliche, but I was a member of a existing supporters group, and Dave was invited along in his Football Supporters Federation capacity, and that existing group, they do fantastic work, but it was trying to take that group onto the next level, and I wouldn't necessarily say there was a reluctance, but there wasn't necessarily the skill set there to take that group onto the next level. And my day job, I do a lot of community engagement, I do a lot of work getting the message out and talking to people. And my skill set, and obviously I met Dave at the meeting, and we thought, well, Football Supporters Federation is based in Sunland. What can we do to basically take fan representation to the next level? And, the likes of the fanzines like yourselves, Love Supreme, Wise Men Say, we did meet in a pub and we did have a few pints, and we started sort of brainstorming in terms of how do we get this mechanism, this group together.
How long ago was that? Just for context.
So this was just after we'd been relegated from the Premier League,
right?
But so it was still in the Martin Bain era. But this sort of thing, this group, this collective coming together, it's been needed for a long time in Sunland. So you can see over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years, a real them and us culture had formed at the football club where, it's a sign of 21st century football where fans are essentially punters. They're just seen as people who turn up and pay the money, when really, fans and supporters are the one constant in any football club. They're the ones who turn up, if we lose, if we win, whatever the weather is, people will still turn up. But there was a real disconnect, and you could feel it in the club. Certainly Zealous Short was, losing interest. He wasn't necessarily putting the money in. David Moyes had come in and sapped all the energy out of the football club. There were no real messages that were coming down from the top. And fans were left sort of scratching our heads saying, well, what is the plan going forward? And I think the pinnacle of that was when we've been relegated from the Premier League. The statement that came out from the club on when we've been relegated against Bournemouth was, you'll hear from Ellis Short in due course about what our plans are going forwards. And we were sat, sort of mid to bottom of the championship, and we were still sat there going, well, what is the plan going forwards? No one's come out from the club. No one said whether he's going to bankroll us. Even if the message coming out from the club was bad, it still wasn't getting to supporters. So we launched, as Dave said, September last year. It was the day of the Preston away game where we actually picked up a point away from home, which was all right. But what we wanted to do, we were going to launch whether we were top of the league, bottom of the league, somewhere in between, because there had been that breakdown in communication with the club. So we got a few of us together, and we started off with an interim committee, just to basically get the group off the ground and get ourselves established and get into that structured dialogue with the football club. But that took a hell of a long time because of a certain individual, being Martin Bain.
How much do you, I know, obviously I'm not going to say that I like Martin Bain. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. How much of it is his fault? Like what happened to the club over the years he was in charge? How much of it was him, and how much of it was his hands are tied behind his back?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things, wasn't it? I think obviously you can put Margaret Byrne in there as well. You can't just blame one person. Ellis Short has obviously a lot to hold his hands up for, to be honest. So, he was ultimately the one that brought these people in, so I suppose you could blame him because they weren't fit for their jobs, were they? I mean, there's, some people even talk to me about, maybe these people should be looked at in a criminal court because some of the things that have gone on in the football club are not right, they say, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of issues there, and we just wanted to make a process at the time, really, as well. That was the other side, but we wanted to do it in the right way, and I think we did in the end, didn't we? That's a big decision we made, and it proved right, I think.
Yeah, it was great getting the likes of Gordon involved as well, and the way that came about was the way we structured the organisation was you have it's a bit boring this, but I'll just quickly go through it.
Do it. I love bureaucracy.
So you have your elected officers like every group, supporters group does, and any other democratic
so
group
that's like
does.
ours, I think it's Gav, isn't it, doing it? Or was it Michael Oates?
Yeah, so Gav's he's the ROKER Rapport's co-opted rep. So we have like your officers that are elected, so you have your chair, your vice chairs and secretary and all that.
I'm chair.
Your chair, yeah. And
I'm vice chair.
You're vice chair. So you're the power man.
Yes.
Right, well, you should have.
Dave's my advisor. Dave's the sort of advisor who feeds a lot into it. But, I don't like this notion of like a traditional committee where you've got a chair or vice chairs or whatever. Because I've talked about skill set and what we can all bring to the table. It's quite a sort of fluid committee. I don't like using the word committee, but
the co-opted reps make it that way because what we did was thought, well, what's all the different entities that's out there? So like you've got the types of people who go to the match, the different demographics. So you've got senior supporters, you've got families, you've got your atmosphere group in the south stand, disabled supporters. We then looked at ex-players, which was how Gordon got involved with it, and we looked at, like I say, the podcasts and the fanzines and stuff, and it was partly because you want to be as representative as possible, but also just make good sense, isn't it, to get everybody together and working together on something without any sort of issues. And I think that's worked. Been really lucky. The sort of people who's got involved have been class, and our reach became very large very quickly because of the network.
Yeah.
So if we want to say something, we've already got the hearts and minds of the podcasts and whatever, so it gets out there. I mean, we'll probably touch on it later, but the food bank thing's an example of that this week. That just went massive, and it was only launched on Monday. And
do you want to touch on the food bank?
Yeah,
you were down there in the fan zone, weren't you?
Yeah, I was down in the fan zone. I was collecting the tins, which was fantastic. We've been looking to partner with the food bank for a long time. The football club and the city are entwined, and when the footy club does well, City does well. But there is a lot of food poverty in the city at the minute, and out at our recent AGM, we put a motion to members to say, like, Red and White Army will partner with Sunland Food Bank, and we had Kate, who's the representative of the food bank, stood up and basically got across to our members what the situation is in the city at the minute. And there are a lot of people, and it's not just people who have benefits, it's people in full-time occupation who are receiving low incomes, who aren't making ends meet at the minute, and they're relying on food banks. And we've seen the examples at Everton and Liverpool, where football clubs coming together to help the wider community really works in food bank collections. And Newcastle's a prime example of somewhere local as well, where a group of volunteers have got together to do regular collections at St James's Park. And for all the Newcastle supporters, there are people who live in the northeast who are going through very similar problems as to what people in the Sunland community are as well. So we thought it was the right logical thing, but we had to launch at the right time. Last season proved difficult. Attendances were dropping, and there wasn't that feel-good factor around the stadium. However, this season we've seen really good results on the pitch. We've got attendances of over 30,000 on average. We thought, right, this is the time to do it. Let's launch it. The Fleetwood game proved slightly problematic. We would have liked a lot more lead-in time in terms of getting the message out to our fan base and our supporters. But given the international break, the club weren't sure whether the game was going to be on or off, because we're waiting to see whether the likes of Oviedo, Gooch,
Scottish lads,
even Flanagan, Northern Ireland, Adam Matthews, they weren't sure how many people were going to get called up, so there was no guarantee that the game was going to go on. It was sort of back end of the week before last when we actually knew, right, food bank collection is going to happen. The Sunland Food Bank came down to the fan zone yesterday, and I tell you what, we had a phenomenal collection. There was over a ton of food was contributed by Sunland supporters, and bucket collections on the day were in excess of £800 as well. So as a one-off event, it was fantastic. But this is something that we're looking to keep going throughout the season. And I think one thing that really sort of stood out for me was the club's backing as well. The club being fantastic, obviously given the space in the fan zone. But I've been in discussions with the academy manager, Paul Reid, and he wants a lot of the kids in the academy to get a real good grounding and an understanding about the local area. And you're not just in a bubble playing football. You need to appreciate where you're living and what the issues are in that area. So we had the under-18s and a handful of the under-23s volunteer to come down and help out as well. And many of you might have seen on social media, the first team actually clubbed together and have made a cash donation as well. So, talking about the club and the city being entwined, you're really seeing it by the actions of the players and the academy staff and the academy players all coming together to support the food bank.
Do you think in a weird way the relegation to League One, ultimately when historians look back on this in 10 years' time, 100 years' time, this period where it went down to League One might be the best thing that happened, because it managed to get everyone back on the same page?
Provided we don't get relegated again. No, I think you're right. I think it's the net effect of it is that we've got the owners that we've got now, and at the minute it all seems really positive, and there seems to be a lot of potential. So I don't think that maybe wouldn't have happened if we hadn't went down to League One. So every cloud, aye.
You had a meeting last week at the club, I believe on Thursday, is that correct? But that wasn't your meeting. I thought it was your meeting, but it wasn't.
No.
So what was all that about?
So the club are looking to sort of roll out a one club philosophy where each part of the club, they've all got their own part to play in the bigger club entity and the bigger club unit. And Red and White Army were invited down to form part of that presentation. So there was me up on stage doing a presentation in front of about 400 or so.
It was every member of staff. It was like from cleaners, groundsmen, through to the whole first team squad, youth squad and marketing team, everyone.
Literally every part of the club was in the Montgomery suite. And it started off, Charlie Methven and Tony Davison were given the facts and figures about the club. But they wanted a fan representative to stand up and basically get the message across to the club that there is more of a connection going on now. We're all pulling in the same direction. This is our club, and we all want to take ownership in it. So I sort of presented that, as I say, the club and the city are entwined, and when one's doing well, the other one benefits from it as well. And I spoke really about the hurt that the fans have gone through, because one thing that the new owners have picked up on is how raw and passionate our fan base is. But there needs to be an appreciation. In the last 15 years, we've been relegated twice from the Premier League with the lowest points totals, and we've just had back-to-back relegations. And there has been a massive disconnect between the club and the supporters, which, we're trying to build bridges at the minute. So there is a healing process that still needs to be ongoing. And I think, the pinnacle of that healing process was the Charlton game. We went 1-0 down within the first 9 minutes, and there's actually really good video. Lyle Taylor scores a penalty, and you hear a ripple from the Charlton fans, but then you hear a roar from the Sunland fans, and you're thinking, right, we are all in this together. And it's one thing, Red and White Army going forwards, the initiatives we want to do, we are taking ownership of certain elements of the club.
I think it's important to see as well that that might sound a bit corny, because it sounds a little bit sort of like a corporate presentation with one club and one community and all that. But if you were in the room, it didn't feel like that. It felt more authentic. So on the face of it, it could look a bit like PR. I guess it is PR, but it did feel right, like in the room. Maybe we're all falling for it. I don't know, but it did feel like that, and the sort of everyone, like the employees, seemed to warm to it as it went. It was a bit like weird at first. It was a little bit awkward to begin with, I think. But actually, it was once Andrew got up, and when Andrew spoke, that was the first sort of applause and that. So it was like that seemed to warm the room up a bit. And it got better, and it
started off. It felt quite corporate-y. It felt quite a corporate presentation, like the big bosses telling the staff, this is our vision and this is what we want to implement. And to be fair, it was a club presentation meant for club staff. But when I got up on stage, I had prepared notes, and I was just thinking, I'll read through them. But actually, the notes went in my pocket. And again, it sounds a bit corny, it sounds a bit cliche, but it made my presentation easy. It's not easy to stand up in front of 400 people and stand there by yourself with a microphone. Some people might freeze, but this is Sunland Football Club, and it was easy to speak from the heart rather than speaking from the head, talking through facts and figures. And a lot of what came across, or what came out of my mouth, it resonated with the players. And that's where Paul Reed, he collared me afterwards, and he's like, look, I really want to get the academy kids involved in any initiatives you want to do. And I think it hit a note with a few of the first team players as well, because next thing I know, there's the food bank collection, the donation from the first team players. So yeah,
I just like to say that it makes a big difference from year gone past, where I heard a story that Mr. Bain got in front of the same staff and told all their staff, that's the cleaners, the people that do all the work, the groundwork and all that type of thing, all the people who work on the pitches and everything. And he told them basically that it was their fault, that as much their fault that we'd gone down as the players' fault.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a little bit of a better story anyway, even if it is a little bit corporate or whatever it was. At least the guys are trying to promote a positive message.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't know that story, which is quite telling.
The tone of the Martin Bain one was, we're all in this together, and you're as responsible for the relegation as the players on the pitch.
When we formed Red and White Army, me and Andrew had 2 separate meetings with Martin Bain, having a cuppa informal, to try to suss it out and try to get him to explain that this is why you need to meet the Red and White Army. And he was very polite, Very articulate, come across quite intelligent, and quite sort of warm, actually, first couple of meetings, but you just didn't trust him. There was just something there, and he sort of tried to play some of the supporter groups off against each other from the first meeting. But the big thing was, looking back on it, it felt like he was doing you a favour setting up the meetings, and most clubs are like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
And when I first met Charlie Methven, I says, look, all we want is to meet you on equal terms. And actually, Charlie's response was, no, not on equal terms. You're giving up your time, you're volunteers. We should be glad that you're coming in and doing that. And he went on to say, which he said a few times, about how he'd set up a supporters group at Oxford. And that's where just the general language he was using, you start to realise that he got it and understood what we're about. And there wasn't all this gamesmanship going on. Maybe there is. Maybe we're being completely duped.
I think the thing with Martin Bain, as Dave said, he was quite warm and he was articulate.
Lovely eyes.
Skin.
Dreamy eyes. But he kept on coming out with a particular phrase when, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
You go for it. I've seen shit house before.
So
He did, yeah.
you knew it was bullshit when he came out with this particular phrase, which is, I'm emotionally connected to the football club.
Nice.
And as soon as he said that, you just thought, what a load of crap.
It's funny, I'll tell you, my dad's a Rangers fan, and when Martin Bain was brought in, he was like, oh, that is not good news, because he was right at Rangers when that all went to shit.
Exactly.
And it can't be a coincidence, can it? It can't be.
He was emotionally connected to his £1.2 million a year, I think. That's where he was emotionally connected to. Yeah, good luck to him, man.
Yeah, it's the same as Rafa at Newcastle, actually, just bringing them out. He's £6 million if they steal. That's why he's staying there, just as an FYI. Just throwing that out there. Just like that, yeah. There'll be no Newcastle fans listening, but yeah. Where else are we here? So what are the aims of Red and White Army over the next 12 months? Yeah, I suppose where we're going to be at this time at the end of next season.
As I said, we still have to be that critical friend, but because of the transparency of the new owners, it does allow us to sort of pursue initiatives working with the club. As Dave said, getting an identity and getting a real feel to the Stadium of Light is something that came out of the survey as one of the top things that needs looking at. So we are looking at getting artwork installed. We've worked with the club already on this one. We've identified sections of the ground where we'll be getting murals put up. So we're in the process of basically tendering for those at the minute, and we're going to get a bit of crowdfunding sorted out for that one, because again, talking about the one club mentality, we've got to take ownership for these sort of things. We can't expect the club to come along and just pay for everything. So fans have spoken and fans have said that we want to create an identity and a real feel for the stadium. So let's try and get things crowdfunded and take our own initiative on this one. So there's a crowdfunding side of things and improving the sort of feel of the stadium. I think we've recently as well had the green light on getting the South Stand name changed.
Cool.
Yeah, so South Stand could literally be any footy club anywhere in the country, and it's our home end, and we need to give it an identity. So we've taken the suggestions from the survey. We're working on those at the minute, and we're compiling a shortlist. And I think in the coming weeks, Dave, that's right, we're going to be putting a vote out to see what we should call the South Stand.
Rough sort of idea, is it going to be former player, former chairman, former manager?
That was the overriding thing from the survey, was that everyone seemed to come back with the main things. The area from which inspiration should be took for the name was club legends was top, so might be the Gordon Armstrong end.
I doubt it somehow, but no,
and there was historical connections, so stuff to do with like Roker Park, or even even like industry, and then there's a few shouts for like Wearmouth or Wearside. So lots of interesting stuff. So it's hard to whittle it down, actually. And you know what? I think we'll probably end up coming up with like 5 with the club, that the club think, that they're all right. We'll put them out, and there'll be loads of kickback of why is this not in there?
Yeah,
100%. So that's definitely going to happen. But it's still, at least it's collaboration with fans, and they're not just naming it what they want. Ultimately, the fans are going to decide, because the long list's been drawn up by fans. The short list will be drawn up with the club, and then fans will vote on that short list.
So yeah, I'm throwing my 2 cents into that one. I think Bob Murray deserves some recognition somewhere in the ground.
Well, you've got the Bob Murray Gates, haven't you?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I suppose you do have the gates. I don't know. I look at sort of Bob Murray's tenure at Sunderland, and I think it's revisionist. So you look at it, and it's like he actually did a pretty sound job of everything that's there that is good about the club is actually from him. The academy, the stadium, the sort of I suppose
even
the infrastructure.
the beacon as well. The Beacon
Yeah.
of Light's a fantastic facility.
Yeah. You cannot knock any of that. These legacies there, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I watched us at ROKER RAPPORT as well under, and Bob Murray wasn't always the popular.
Well, it's
That's
funny
right,
that because obviously my sort of because of my age, I look at it from essentially a textbook sense because I just read about it. And I remember going when I was younger, but
Even the sort of relegation before Quinny and his magic carpet came along, there were protests outside the Murray Gate.
I remember that.
It's a tricky one because somebody like Bob Murray is divisive in some ways. And you sort of look at it, and as you say, Bob Murray's put the infrastructure in place to get us to where we should be as a football club. But on the flip side, the Roker Park days and when we've been relegated with a lowest points total from the Premier League, people were protesting for him to be out of the club.
There was the infamous moment on Premier Passions documentary as well about the worrying hand wringing about gold taps whilst on the pitch we were getting relegated.
I've got to say that I had a season ticket up in that Premier Concourse, and the bathrooms up there are 10 times better. I mean, I'm all about them taps. I was so
I think
upset
from
when I
that time you got to understand as well, Bob Murray was never an Ellis Short, was he? You know what I mean?
No.
He wasn't a mega rich guy. He did run it frugally. He didn't put a lot of his own money in, sort of thing. Listen, he's done really well, and the stuff, like you said, the legacy that he's left behind is amazing, isn't it? The ground, the academy, all that type of thing. So you have to hold your hand up and say that you did fantastic well there. On the playing side, maybe not quite as well. Yeah, he didn't put, like you say, fortunes in and back us that way, but everything else he left behind, great.
Shit, we nearly became a almost a super club, didn't we? Like that era, we finished 2 7ths. If they'd built on it, then it would have been. I think even now.
We were second at Christmas.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We played Man United once, I think in January or February in 2001. It was first v second.
Top of the table clash, in
know.
the Premier League.
And I think that was the one where I think Andy Cole handled it and they ended up beating one. Maybe drawn, I can't remember. Not bitter or anything. So
I think in terms of other things for the Red and White Army,
we went off track quite a bit there, didn't we?
So naming the the South Stand would be cool, I think, to be involved with, and obviously we want to continue working with the food banks as well, on the back of the success there. But we also just want to keep expanding and keep being visible and relevant and representative. And we've got 7,500 members now, which is pretty good going considering we launched just a year ago. And we want to keep building on that. We want to look at maybe having a sort of a donation part on the website just so fans can voluntarily put a few quid in a year or something just to help initiatives, get some sort of materials, help get flags produced and things like that. Just daft things like for the AGM, I went and Sainsbury's on my way down to buy 3 reams of paper, so just daft stuff like that to cover costs, because there is a few costs, and maybe get a few pints out of it.
But I think I'd like to say Red and White Army is the thing that, it's probably obvious, which it is obvious, but everybody cares, you know what I mean? Everybody's on there, loves the club, and only wants to be there because of the betterment. Nobody's making any money out of it. Nobody's doing it for any other reasons than they want to see the club improve. And there is cynical people out there that may not think that, but that is the whole. I can say honestly, having been at most of the meetings, that the guys, these two here, are amazing. They work socks off to do all sorts of different bits and bobs and put stuff together, which takes a lot of time and effort. But they're doing it for all the right reasons. We just want our club to get better, and I think it has got better. I think we'd all, put our hands on our heart and say it has got better, and we just hope and pray that it does continue that way. We want to be there to be a critic, but we 100% we want the club to get better, and that's what we're there for. All the lads that are there, and women as well. There's loads of girls go as well. So it's been great. Yeah, I think.
I've got a few final I'll let you make any final points you want to make, but I've got a few sort of criticism is maybe the wrong word, but few sort of things that I've noticed.
Observations.
Observations. There we are. So,
There you
so the first one is when I went to the last AGM, it was a ballot where you raised your hand, and I found that very
Clunky.
Yeah, I didn't like it because it's very difficult to know. A, it's just putting your hands up. I just think it's not great. But B, I think if somebody doesn't agree, but everyone else does agree, then they're not going to put their hand up on it. And I think maybe, and this leads into the second question I've got as well, but maybe it should be either an email ballot or a written ballot. And the second one, the question I've got is maybe about sort of live streaming. I don't know, obviously that costs, and I know that, that's more things for you to worry about, but sort of 200 fans were there, I think, for the last one.
350.
Or 350 were there for the last one, but you've said you've got nearly 8,000 members, so you're going to have representation. I'm not saying obviously not everyone can vote, but it would be quite interesting to see if you could try and build the people who vote on the things that do matter. I think that's something that I don't know how you would necessarily do it, but to expand on, I don't know if you've thought about them things. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, you started off there by saying last AGM that this was our first AGM, so there are lessons to be learnt, and we do take observations on board, and it is something that we thought about, because there was one motion that we passed which was ridiculously tight. I think there was only about 9 or 10 votes in it.
That was the
it was looking at a feasibility study in terms of a 2-tiered membership,
and converting into a trust.
Yeah. So I think certainly when it comes to voting in the future, there will be slightly better methods being looked at.
Having said that, the national organisation works in a similar way, that you have to be at the AGM. Most AGMs work like that. You can vote by proxy. Mm-hmm. So if you can't make it, you can pass your vote on to someone who would, that will be taken care of next year through the registration process. But I do think, I get where you're coming from, because it would increase the engagement, and there's loads of plus points for it. Once you start streaming stuff, people start not coming, even when they can.
That's true.
And you'll be streaming in an empty room or a half-empty room and look like a failing organisation. Also, and I know this is, not great for people who live further afield and stuff like that, but there's a lot of merit in looking in people's eyes and getting in a room. And that might sound a bit old-fashioned, because as we established
earlier,
you've got
to think for eyes,
but I think there's a lot to be said for getting in a room together as well. And I hear what you're saying about being a bit worried about putting your hand up, but I think people have to just come along and get over that. And actually, for a first AGM, to get that many there was great. Obviously, part of that was because Stewart Donald was there as well, not daft. But I think we would have got about half that, which would have been incredible. I know how many people go to the national AGM. I know how many people go to other supporter groups, and that, believe me, is phenomenal. And I think we'll build on that, and we'll take on suggestions. But there's a line to walk with the online engagement when it comes to sort of the democratic overheads.
There's an issue as well, I suppose. If you do the email kind of ballot, what happens if mags start getting involved? You don't know if people can sort of sabotage what you're trying to do. I understand that. I thought it was just interesting to sort of see your kind of view on it, because when I was there, I felt that it would have been hard for me to maybe stick my hand up and disagree with something that was, why would I be against food banks? There's no idea. I would always be for it. But you know what I mean? Somebody, for whatever reason, might be against it. Yeah. Wouldn't want to put their hands up because everyone's like, who's that dickhead over there who doesn't care for the homeless?
Well, that's very true. But I think there was a motion that was sort of debated, which was about the possibility of converting into a trust and having a tiered membership. And 3 or 4 people got up and spoke on sort of different sides of it, and there was a few little murmured discussions, and that's class. That's what you want. Obviously, you want more of it, but as a first AGM, I was over the moon with the level of debate and the quality of discussion going on in the room, and actually that got voted down because the conversion to trust and the tiered membership, because the people in the room really cared. And what I took from that was the members feel ownership of the group, and that's exactly how it should be.
Yeah, because that was why that one got turned down, isn't it? Because people were essentially saying, I don't want to have to pay to be part of this group that's meant to represent me. And I think that was essentially what it was, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
We never put that forward.
no, I know you didn't. No, I just remember
but
the conversation in the room.
It did sort of take on that sort of aspect when actually there's a little bit of misunderstanding because we always want membership to be free. The idea of it was just if we were to have a trust arm, you'd pay subs, all trusts do it. So you would pay like a $5 a year or whatever it might be for the trust arm, but it would never stop you being a part of the Red and White Army and part of the democratic structure.
I think you might end up hitting on something with the sort of general donations. So I know that somebody like myself, you know, might actually put in more money than £5 a year. So
How much would you put in?
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot here now.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're willing to put donation in.
Yeah, I put £1 a month, and that's 12 quid. There we are, 12 quid for the year.
Sure.
The thing is, what I'm saying is it might actually give you a better idea of how you can, because if people are seeing what you're doing and think it's, you know, it's positive, they might look at the food bank stuff you've done at the weekend, might see the stuff you're doing really well, then, you know, your donations might actually, you know, kind of end up surpassing what your trust sort of arm was. In terms of getting involved with the Red and White Army, how would I? Right now, I'm like, I'm really passionate about Sunland stuff, and I want to get involved. How would I get involved? How could I steal your seat?
How could you steal my seat? Well, you could pull it from underneath us right now, but in terms of the organisation, first of all, become a member. You can do that by going on redandwhitearmy.co.uk. We do have open meetings periodically through the year. And I would really encourage people to go to those open meetings as well, because it's a good forum, you know, obviously to sit down, discuss things, and actually get things formed to take to the club.
So the open meetings, just to clarify, open meetings, they're totally different at the AGM. So your open meetings, are they the things you do at, say, like, I can't remember what pub you did it in?
Peacock.
The Peacock. Is it the Wise Men Say pub that they always do?
I was upstairs now. It's informal, but it's there to make sure that we're sort of taking the temperature of, you know, what the mood is with fans. They were particularly important when there was the whole debate about protests last season, and I'm very aware that this sort of stuff to you sort of average match going fan might sound a bit dry and boring and a bit nerdy, but like the meetings haven't been. They've been all right, and like just basically like being in a pub before the match where you're having a bit crack. But just with a little bit of sort of focus on things, and we genuinely take from those meetings what we take ideas and issues, and we take them to the club. Not just in the meetings, mind. That's all supplemented by all of the online discussion as well, through the SMB, the Pure Football, and through yourselves, through ELS, Wise Men Say, but also just from our Twitter feed and stuff. And it's so whenever there's a meeting coming up, our sort of Twitter feed will come alive, and we'll say, right, what's the crack? What do you want us to take the club?
Right, anyway, back. I can't remember what you were saying now.
Sorry.
Well, basically, Dave's just jumped in, stole me thunder.
Sorry,
there.
mate. Sorry.
But no, we are very active on social media. So if you wanted to steal my position, as we were discussing before, first and foremost, become a member, get involved, volunteer your time. You know, things like the food bank initiatives. We've got other things going forwards. You know, be a part of the Red and White Army if you've got the time to do so. When it comes to stealing my seat, if you're inclined to do so.
The only reason I brought it was because you are Democratic.
We're a democratic organisation, so our next AGM will be summer.
Andrew's getting a little bit worried, isn't he?
I know.
I'm going to start running a
I'll
campaign.
tell you what,
a slur campaign on him.
tell you what, the last AGM was uncontested, so this is new territory for me, actually having someone usurping my position.
Yeah, I'm not really. I don't have the time.
We've got Dave here. Dave signalling that he fancies doing
The
it.
other thing is, I mean, he's the vice, so if he just knocks you off the side, then
it's all going on.
I'm in the smart position because the buck stops with Andrew. And just sort of like
you can just blame him, can't you?
Exactly.
It's playing a political game. But on a serious note, become a member, become an active volunteer, get yourselves involved. When the AGM comes around, because we are a democratic organisation, each one of the committee member positions you can apply. There will be sort of a candidate statement that goes out. Fill in those details. It'll be published on our website and on our social media, just so our members know who they're potentially voting for as a candidate. So yeah, come the summer next year, I might not be sitting on the seat I am now, but you know that'll be because there'll be somebody who's coming forward who, you know, fans have voted on, who could do potentially a better job than me. So we are a democratic organisation. So become a member, become an active part of the group.
And I figured if Kevin Phillips turns up for my role, I'm knackered, to be honest.
Yeah. You're definitely going to lose. Niall Quinn as well.
Yeah, Niall Quinn on board.
Yeah,
I'm in deep
you'll
doo-doo.
struggle.
Yeah.
I think you'll do all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So is there any other sort of points you want to bring up about the Red and White Army that I've missed with my lack of research?
I think just we're talking about like we want to expand and like get more members, and you know it'd be great if every Sunderland fan was a member. But particularly we would like to look for younger fans getting involved. It tends to be the way of the world. These groups will naturally get sort of older blokes.
Do you know why?
basically,
It's because younger fans, like I know myself, me 10 years ago, everything's optimistic, isn't it? It's like the club can do no wrong.
I also just didn't care about this sort of stuff when I was a young'un. I just wanted to go to the match and enjoy it, and that was it really. And there's nothing more with that. And it's just through the FSF stuff it opened my eyes to what you can do and can achieve. But it would be good to have some younger fans and sort of, you know, try to make it a welcoming environment for them in the meeting so they don't feel daft and they want to get involved. Just so we're as representative as we possibly can be.
Did you end up getting an LGBT?
Yeah, that was.
Did, yeah.
Because I remember that was one of the ones you were talking about last at the AGM. Did you have one then?
No, we did.
Paul Nelson.
Paul Nelson. He got in touch really early, as soon as we launched, and offered. And but good point about him is that although that he's the LGBT rep, he's actually just into loads of stuff that we do. So he's not just banging one drum, you know. He's looking at all the different issues. So you're not as a co-opted rep, you're not sort of pigeonholed into just right. You can only speak about those issues. It's like, you know, you get involved in everything.
Yeah, but Paul's actually sort of taking the lead on the engagement with the club at the minute for the artwork in the ground. So although you are a particularly co-opted rep, if you've got a passion, you know, artwork, whatever, then there are other roles for you within the organisation. Yeah,
I remember you saying at the AGM that if there's an area that you don't think's represented, you know, put yourself forward. If you think there's an area of the fan base that isn't getting represented, then you know, jump ahead. And I suppose that's the point, isn't it?
And then on the back of the AGM, got Janice is involved now, who's our female women's representative. We had a representative looking at the women's football club, but actually we've got Janice involved, who is our female representative, taking all things forward, sort of from that demographic of our support as well.
Good. Are we all done?
Think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, let you all skive off and do whatever you're having to do tonight. Thanks for listening. I've been Connor Bromley. Thanks for coming in. And thanks for making your debuts on the podcast,
Thank you very much.
Gordon. It's your second show, isn't it?
All good. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Okay, thanks.